Right. In this next part of chapter 5 of Counsels and Maxims, Schopenhauer gives us a couple of short sections about growing older. He begins with this metaphor of two lamps, both of which burn for a long time, but for different reasons. And he gives us some insight into an observation that each person's character seems to best suit a certain stage of life. Here's what he writes. There are two ways of reaching a great age, both of which presuppose a sound constitution as a conditio sine qua non. They may be illustrated by two lamps, one of which burns a long time with very little oil, because it has a very thin wick, and the other just as long, though it has a very thick one, because there is plenty of oil to feed it. Here the oil is the vital energy, and the difference in the wick is the manifold way in which the vital energy is used. Up to our 36th year, we may be compared in respect of the way in which we use our vital energy to people who live on the interest of their money. What they spend today, they have again tomorrow. But from the age of 36 onwards, our position is like that of the investor who begins to entrench upon his capital. At first he hardly notices any difference at all, as the greater part of his expenses is covered by the interest of his securities. And if the deficit is but slight, he pays no attention to it. But the deficit goes on increasing until he awakes to the fact that it is becoming more serious every day. His position becomes less and less secure, and he feels himself growing poorer and poorer, while he has no expectation of this drain upon his resources coming to an end. His fall from wealth to poverty becomes faster every moment, like the fall of a solid body in space, until at last he has absolutely nothing left. A man is truly a woeful plight if both the terms of this comparison, his vital energy and his wealth, really begin to melt away at one and the same time. It is the dread of this calamity that makes love of possession increase with age. So, in this first page, a nice metaphor of two lamps, which both burn for a long time. We might say two ways of living into old age. A thin wick with a modest amount of oil, that is to say, vital energy used very slowly, very carefully, or a thick wick which has a great amount of vital energy behind it, a great amount of oil to burn. So a person with a great deal of sort of inner energy can live a very sort of robust life, or a person might live on a smaller sort of amount of kind of native life force with a much more abstemious lifestyle, is what I take Schopenhauer to be saying here. And then the image, I don't know why he chose the age 36, the image of living off of your interest, in which case the sort of the money automatically generates the money that you live on day to day, and the capital never decreases. But then after a certain age, we enter a kind of decline. And again, analogizing money to vital energy, the idea is that our overall life force is gradually fading away at that point, our late 30s, our 40s, our 50s, until it begins to accelerate and we begin to feel, I can't do the things I used to do. My sort of my energy level, my ability, my mental focus are declining, and they're declining at an increasing rate. And I think that's what Schopenhauer is describing here as the feeling that I'm living off of a deficit. The balance is quickly approaching zero, and it would be the worst calamity of all to have both my vital energy and my wealth disappear at the same time. And this accounts in a certain way for a type of greed or possessiveness that afflicts elderly people. He says, as we age, we get more concerned with bodily things, with material things, with wealth, and that's the reason why. Schopenhauer goes on. On the other hand, at the beginning of life, in the years before we attain majority, and for some little time afterwards, the state of our vital energy puts us on a level with those who each year lay by a part of their interest and add it to their capital. In other words, not only does their interest come in regularly, but the capital is constantly receiving additions. This happy condition of affairs is sometimes brought about, with health as with money, under the watchful care of some honest guardian. O happy youth and sad old age. Continuing the metaphor from before, if we can manage to add to our capital, then we are not only turning a profit, but we are making security against later decline, both in wealth and in health and vital energy. Going on. Nevertheless, a man should economize his strength even when he is young. Aristotle observes that amongst those who were victors at Olympia, only 2 or 3 gained a prize at 2 different periods, once in boyhood and then again when they came to be men. And the reason of this was that the premature efforts which the training involved so completely exhausted their powers that they failed to last on into manhood. As this is true of muscular, so it is still more true of nervous energy, of which all intellectual achievements are the manifestation. Hence those infant prodigies, ingenia praecocia, the fruit of a hothouse education, who surprise us by their cleverness as children, afterwards turn out very ordinary folk. Nay, the manner in which boys are forced into an early acquaintance with the ancient tongues may perhaps be to blame for the dullness and lack of judgment which distinguish so many learned persons. So that's the end of the first of these 3 short sections that I'll be talking about today. And Schopenhauer here citing Aristotle, that there are very few Olympic victors who are consistently strong and excellent physically at a young age and then again at a mature age. The reason being that the kind of training necessary to succeed at a young age spoils your health. He says the same thing is true of the life of the mind, of the nervous energy and intellectual achievement, that the more power exerted in youth seems to be dangerous to the possibility of having that same power available in one's maturity and in old age. And then this kind of venomous observation about child prodigies, people who educated, maybe we might think like John Stuart Mill, according to a certain, he says, hothouse education, a kind of intense greenhouse of intellectual activity, may, perhaps unlike Mill, turn out to be quite mediocre and ordinary as adults. That is, that they sort of burn up all of their creative energy and uniqueness when they are quite young and there's nothing left to sustain a life of excellence later on. And this sort of jab at what we might call classical education today. Young boys who are forced to learn Greek and Latin in their primary years may turn out to be quite dull-witted and lack significant judgment for this same sort of reason. Schopenhauer, certainly no enemy of studying classical languages, but perhaps an enemy of the premature study of classical languages. Going on to the next section now. I have said that almost every man's character seems to be specially suited to some one period of life, so that on reaching it, the man is at his best. Some people are charming so long as they are young, and afterwards there is nothing attractive about them. Others are vigorous and active in manhood, and then lose all the value they possess as they advance in years. Many appear to best advantage in old age, when their character assumes a gentler tone, as becomes men who have seen the world and take life easily. This is often the case with the French. This peculiarity must be due to the fact that the man's character has something in it akin to the qualities of youth, or manhood, or old age, something which accords with one or another of those periods of life, or perhaps acts as a corrective to its special failings. So, an observation that people's character has something in it that seems to match either youth or maturity or old age, and that is the time period at which that person will be at their personal best. It's worth remembering here that for Schopenhauer, character is unalterable. It is just sort of a fundamental fact about a person that wells up through their life. It's not an ongoing developing sort of thing, I don't think. So it's simply the case that if you are, like maybe many Frenchmen, he suggests, the kind of person who is at his best in old age, then your youth and your maturity might be sort of preparatory to a certain kind of easygoing, flourishing old manhood, we might say. The final section is quite short, and here it is. The mariner observes the progress he makes only by the way in which objects on the coast fade away into the distance and apparently decrease in size. In the same way, a man becomes conscious that he is advancing in years when he finds that people older than himself begin to seem young to him. That's the end of the sections I'm going to be sharing for today. And there's another interesting observation that just as things seem to recede on the coast as we move away from them, we become aware of our age when the people older than us no longer seem elderly or even middle-aged, but kind of robust and in the prime of life. This is the old expression that 50 is the new 30, right? Or now that I am the age that I am, thinking, looking at my grandmother at the end of an age where I thought my grandmother was middle-aged, I say that's not middle-aged anymore. That's the prime of life. When I was 11 years old, I thought that was middle-aged. I thought that was old. But now it seems that that people that age and older seem to me to be quite spry and young. They're not changing. It's my perspective that's changing as I'm moving away. Things are changing size. So there are some observations from Schopenhauer about the process of growing older. The next section of this chapter is 8 pages long, quite long, and we'll take a look at it in the next video. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.